We are live, I think.
Yeah,
I think we're live. Yeah.
Are we? Yeah.
Yeah. We're probably gonna cut this part.
I didn't get a pop-up. Usually I get a... This meeting is being live streamed or something. Once again, cut the first minute.
It's not showing up on the channel yet.
Yeah. I'm suspicious is what I'm saying.
Oh, no, we are live. It's there.
Ah, great. We want to do like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then...
Okay.
Psychotech.
And we'll do a big clap so I can see it on the audio. All right. 5, 4, 3. Welcome to Psychotechnologies Live.
Psychotechnologies Live. I don't know why we got jazz hands, but we got jazz hands now.
That's our thing now. It's our ritual, so we have to do it.
Yeah. There's Jewish tradition is like 3 times. You do something 3 times.
Hashkafa.
The tradition.
No, not hashkafa. It's something else. I used to know the word. Yeah. It's a tradition. We've done it 3 times, so now that's the thing. We have to do it forever, unless we do like a vow breaking ceremony.
Maybe they were like OCD when they came up with this. They were just like have a tendency towards OCD, and so they were like, I know, let's just normalize it into the culture by saying,
because
get stuck with it.
Because Judaism is so legalistic, like you have to have some sort of like OCD or OCPD to like enjoy it. And that's why like so many Jews are lawyers. Because it's just like it just works the personality. It's just like, oh, these are the rules, and you do them and you follow them.
Yep.
I
wonder about the mind, or if you think about the mind as a lawful structure that follows rules, then I wonder if it makes your mind, just thinking about it in that way, I wonder if that makes your mind more lawful and structured than if you think about the mind as a chaotic entity that is unpredictable.
I think it's like correlation again, but yeah, I do. Like back when I was religious, I was much more like orderly and like sort of like their rules, their way things work, and you know, there's a lot of like space within that still. But yeah, it was like very much like, what are the rules? Until I realized there are no rules in life.
No,
just consequences.
Don't tell them. Don't tell the listeners. You may give them existential crises.
Those, like, okay, yeah, like, I guess some people will go through an existential crisis, like, woo, now you know there are no rules. But, like, it doesn't matter, because I'm just saying that, right? Like, people, like, I don't think there's, like, anyone that's, like, going to hear me say that and then is going to have, like, the profound realization that there are no rules and we're just, like, everyone just does whatever they want. Or maybe, actually, I don't even know how that triggers.
How to trigger profound insight in people?
No, yeah, like, you kind of, like, there's got to be a lot more context, I think. Like, context setting and stuff. Because, like, I'm just saying that, right? Like if you believe that that's not true, you're just going to write me off. And if you already believe that's true, then there's no crisis because you've already done it or something.
I think there's something to be... It's popped into my head already 3 times. So something like the base metaphysical layer of your operation of your mind.
Chazaka, that's what it's called. Sorry. Go on. I didn't do it 3 times. Sorry. Because you said the 3 times again.
Okay. the base, like we seem to exist as minds with a very much like some sort of base layer of how things work. So I think in our society, a lot of people exist with like the world is made of atoms, and I'm a person moving around with other objects made of atoms.
Yeah.
But there's also bases like lawfulness, like the basis of the mind is lawful, and then
the base of your mind is lawful.
Right. Well, like if you believe that, then you're probably existing in a subset of mind where it is probably pretty lawful.
Yeah.
And then, if you want to blow someone's mind on there is no rules, or if you want to blow someone's mind full stop, you need to sort of work out where their base is, and then like break it, penetrate it, bend it, do something that doesn't
no, I don't do that.
align with the base.
Yeah.
So it may be like you do some magic with someone who doesn't believe in magic, or you do something very predictable to someone who's very creative and chaotic, or you disagree with the way someone thinks things work and they get very confused.
Yeah. I'm really careful about that. Because I have accidentally made people cry when I was younger.
Story time. What did he do?
It was like back when I was like still figuring out the God stuff, and I was just like talking about like beliefs in God and stuff, and like this, like I was like doing that like edging where it's like in that line where I'm like, do I believe in God? Do I not believe in God? And like just sort of talking about things around it, and like, oh, this is what and then like she was like trying to put me in a category, like, so do you believe in God or do you not believe in God? And then I was like in that like kind of liminal space where I was like, does it matter? And then she started crying, and then I felt bad.
Well, here's the problem. If you believe in God, it matters a lot. If you don't, then it doesn't matter nearly as much.
But like it shouldn't matter to it shouldn't matter to other people if I believe in God that much. Like it matters, but like it shouldn't like me being ambiguous about it shouldn't matter more than either of those two.
I can see a person being in the like people who don't believe go to hell sort of belief, and then you as a person sitting in the liminal space is like, is he gonna go to hell or is he not gonna go to hell? Like he's gonna flip a coin to decide about this thing that matters greatly to me. He's gonna flip a coin.
Yeah, but I wasn't like just like arbitrary about it. I was like, I don't know. I was like kind of like transitioning, or I was like exploring it or something. I don't remember exactly what, but it was like it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that solid. Like it wasn't like yes, no. It was like it was something else. Like even now, like my belief in God is like what do you mean by God? Like if I changed, like I have like a very specific definition of God that I, kind of believe in, but like I think like the way I'm framing it, like it just cuts it differently. So like there are atheists would be like, well, that's not God. And then there are religious people that be like, that's not God. But then I can then I'll get into like a discussion with them of like, well, actually, I believe this is God, right? Like if you look at the philosophers and the things that they say, and like these are the qualities that God has, and this phenomenon has this quality, and so if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck.
Right. So God is psychotechnologies.
Religion is psychotechnologies, I would say. I would say God is like the thing, like what we're doing is worshiping God, essentially. Like every like psychotechnology that's like worth living and like touches on a profound truth is religion, essentially, or is the path of God, is the pursuit. Is part of that. Like, we're just recreating religion. Like, that's just what we're doing. And I think there's an important aspect of what we're doing is to recognize that there is something bigger than us, and more powerful. Like, to always sort of keep that in mind. And whether that means like fractals, and like whatever fractal we're in, there's also like a bigger fractal, or whether that means like, I think like a person in the sky is very juvenile, but like limitlessness or existence or something as being something that we're within or subservient to is really important to recognize.
So there's a question here of like, what do we mean by psychotechnology? When we say religion and psychotechnology, what do we mean by psychotechnology?
Yeah. Oh, well, what do we mean by that?
Yeah, I realize we may mean different things. Which
Yeah, probably we should have talked about this before we named our channel that. But it's art. You do the thing and then you understand why you're doing it after.
Some part of psychotechnology is, I guess, what I would call methods that work on the mind. And that includes therapeutic methods, that includes meditation, like that includes holding your breath, does something to the mind. That includes all sorts of therapies. It includes all sorts of different modalities or exercises or experiences that work on and work with the mind. And in that sense, religion falls right in that bucket of a older, compared to sort of modern psychology, an older method of working with the mind. Particularly, I see religions as having been very good at bringing large groups of people to alignment and to work together on something, which you could imagine would have been very hard historically. Convincing everyone to do
It's
things.
still hard.
Right, but it would have been even harder at a time with less people and less communication channels. Like now, if I'm like running late, I can call someone and be like, "Hey, I'm late," and everyone knows I still intend to turn up. 200 years ago, sometimes people just like, even 50, 60 years ago, you'd go on a date with someone and you'd say, "Meet here at this time," and then if they weren't there, that was it.
Well, I don't think they didn't have standardized time really until the railroads. So like it wasn't like meet me at 4:00 and then it's like 4:05. Like, oh, I guess they're not coming. Like they didn't have like clocks and stuff. So it'd be like,
but even
meet me at noon, like when the sun is in the middle of the sky.
Even like 1950s, like you say, let's go on a date tomorrow night at 6 p.m. if at this place. If they don't show up, you know, did they leave home? They're not at home for you to call them and check. They're not. They're on their way but caught in traffic. You wait half an hour, you wait 3 hours. Like there's just what's going on? We don't know.
Yeah. There probably was like some form of like shelling systems where it's like, it's like this is what's expected. This is what
people found a way, or people did the best they could, but it was a different world where you just couldn't communicate in the same ways that you can. Anyway, psychotechnologies. What do you mean by psychotechnologies?
Yeah, so I think your definition is a lot of it. I would also include like the stuff that we're talking about now with like the interpersonal aspect. So for me, like a lot of this stuff is it's understanding my own mind, it's understanding other people's minds, and it's understanding the interactions. Would be like most of it.
Mm-hmm. I happen to have a strong interest in working with the mind and therapeutic processes and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, me too. Like I love this stuff because like one of the big things that I'm always sort of keeping in mind is like, because there's sort of a tendency to just like, if you're not sort of a little bit vigilant or paying attention, I think people tend to just sort of slip off and just get in their head these things are important. But I think like always trying to ground it in my own psyche and being like, well, is this true? Does this actually have an effect on me, or those around me? Is there something I can do with this now that I couldn't do with it before, and is that reliable? It turns it from a sort of like woo magical thinking into like no, this is real. Like I can make predictions with it. I can like my relationships are different now, and like the way I operate in the world is different now. And then that's what makes it real. To a certain extent, a lot of it is real in the moment, and that's true as well. But it's like it's real as a psychotechnology. If I can actually, if I or someone else can use it, I think. Yeah.
Good question there of what makes a good psychotechnology.
Yeah, that is a good question. Do you have like does an answer pop to mind, or because I've just been talking for a while?
what actually popped into mind was a subtle structure of like, what you need is when you're making a psychotechnology, you need it to be like pro-social with itself. And so there's a bunch of psychotechnologies that have like a trick in them, or like a loophole, like what if you did the opposite of that? Or and opposite's not so bad, but like Byron Katie's work has a like, is that true? And then has like a second set of like, is that really true?
When will that be true? Yeah.
Say it.
I think it's when will that be true?
Is that always true? Anyway, it's got a couple of variations.
Yeah.
And there's something about the shape of that psychotechnology. It's great, it works, it does some interesting things. But there's something about that, the shape of that as a psychotechnology, that is antagonistic to the object that it's dancing with. Like, is that true? Well, there's a way to do it that is less.
It depends on it depends on the delivery.
There are definitely some things that need to have that question asked of them, and it depends on the delivery. But there's some way in which the shape of that psychotechnology doing that, is that true, is like a standoffish move with the object that it's trying to play with. Whereas, and this is an interesting question, do you want us, if you want a good psychotechnology, perhaps, what popped into mind was like, it should be more consonant with what it's working with, like more compassionate or more, this is not necessarily the case, but you need to be thinking about the structure of the psychotechnology as you're creating. You want it, especially if you want it to propagate and you want people to go away and use it themselves, you need it to be streamlined with what's already going on in someone's mind. You need it to be ordering, you need it to be, you need it to feel good to use in some ways.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that one. And it does need to feel good to be used. It needs to feel like love and compassion and truth, for sure. And really you also want like harmony, if you can get that. But yeah, like to me that's what that's sort of like the trick to the psychotechnologies, is that it's like a lot of it is like we play these games and we do these we create the forms and stuff, and I'm not knocking that, like that's important, but like at the end of the day it's really like what energy are you bringing, and like what energy are you delivering into the system, and sorting through it and figuring it all out is like very mechanical, and it's like very important. But if you're coming in with like like love and peace and trying to get along, then that's what's going to happen. And at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do. Like that's what you're always trying to do. And I think that's actually where the God comes in, is that like you're all like whatever you're doing, like you can get caught up in the thing and like the nuance, and if you're gonna be like, no, it has to be like this, like you're inside someone's psyche, like doing that, like you don't actually know what's going on in their psyche. No matter how much you don't know. And it's always bigger than you, and like keeping that in mind, and trying to realize the nature of the universe is love. Like that to me is worship. Like that is how you worship God. And then these other things are like more like mechanics of the mind, kind of, I guess. So it's like kind of this combination of like a priest that's also a mechanic of the mind.
There's a book I read, popped into mind, called Collaborating with the Enemy, and it was a business book about mediation.
What?
About mediation, like sitting at table, potentially with people that you are
enemies with.
Well, like adversarial within business.
Yeah.
And the biggest piece of advice that book gave was to like sit at the table and don't leave. And if you lock two adversarial parties in a room for 5 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours of mediation, eventually mediation will work. But there's something where staying in the room and keeping that like good bringing mediation energy flavor to the room will eventually yield progress. And there are all sorts of fun versions of Chris Voss. He was a hostage negotiator.
He's the FBI guy.
Of like, push it this way, push it that way. But there's something where just staying in the room for 5 hours or more will help make progress on the issue.
Yeah.
As long as those people don't leave the table.
Yeah, 100%. I 100% agree with with that. Like just being, even if it like doesn't make sense and nothing's working, like it's like the metaphor I love for this one is, when you put the metronomes all on one, and like they're all like offbeat and like nothing, it doesn't look like it's gonna sync and everything's just off, but like I don't know how that works, but it will eventually like start to sync.
So you put them on like a plate that is hanging or balanced, or
that
they're all moving a bit, and then they're all moving but out of sync with each other, and they're all affecting each other until eventually suddenly they look chaotic, and then suddenly they're like in sync with each other.
Yeah,
because they're all
exactly.
How they synchronize.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's how I see it. And I think to like, that's how I see like a lot of the times when with our other groups, right, where it's sort of chaotic, but and like not really working, but like it will eventually sync.
Right. As long as everyone stays in the room, yes.
Yeah. And to me that's like that, like are they staying in the room or not is like huge. And so it's almost always like when I'm first meeting people or first doing something, like that's almost always like the first, like that's always like the main question I'm trying to answer is it's either like how to, like what is it going to take for them to stay or leave, or like how do I do that? How do I get them to stay, essentially?
Right.
Because you will, and if you're open, like if you're like open and you do that, you come from that place of love and compassion, like we were talking about before, like it sort of speeds up that process and makes it more pleasant, which increases the odds that people are going to stay.
had popped into mind. I just helped someone sell a car recently, and it was like on a classifieds advertised, and then the person stood up to look at the car, and the person who was selling the car doesn't like negotiating, isn't good at negotiating, and asked me to like help out and stand there. And they listed the price at $6,950, and I have no idea about this car or how old it is or what it's worth or whatever. And they knew that they're like weak on negotiating, and sure enough, the person buying the car was like, "How much?" And the person selling the car was like, I listed, this is what I listed it at. And the person buying the car was like, "No, but how much?" And then offered 5,000, and listed it 7,000, offered 5,000. And the person selling the car, struggles with negotiation. And I'm like, I was standing there, and I'm like, oh, this is uncomfortable. Like, there's a gap here. He's trying to buy it for 5,000.
You said that in the middle of the negotiation?
I didn't say that, but I said a couple other things. Like, I could tell that the person buying the car knew what they were doing. Like, they immediately turned on the engine, they immediately looked under the hood, they immediately like checked a couple things about the car. And I was like, oh, this person is a professional. Like, this person already knows how much they can sell this car for within a couple of days, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so he's buying the car to resell it, and he's trying to whatever he can get lower. That's his profit margin, plus however much it's worth, or whatever.
I assume so. And we're in like pandemic type era where new cars are not so easy to acquire, and old like second used cars are going. There's quite a good used car market at the moment, so I suspect that plays into it. But this person was like, "I'll give you 5,000," and I was like, and this is uncomfortable. There's a gap here, and to the extent that the interesting thing about negotiation is that to the extent that I'm willing to just be uncomfortable, is the extent that I sold it for like more like 6,950 than more like 5,000, because I was like, oh, this is uncomfortable. He's trying to pressure me to like tolerate $5,000 as the value of this car. Now, I'm lucky in this case because I was not invested, but it's sort of like, in my mind, I decided, like, how much do I want this car to sell for? And I picked the 6,500, and 5,000 became 5,500. I was like, no. And 5,500 became 600, 6,000, and the person was like, how much? And I said 6,500, and the guy said 6,200, and I went, nope. And he said 6,300, and I said, nope. And, and it, like, this long, tense process of me saying no, and I'm willing to say no until such time as the price meets the price.
Right.
And, it's like I've now had the taste for blood. I want to do more negotiating. But there's the phenomena of the like, my ability to tolerate the discomfort is my ability to sell it at 6,500 rather than 5,500. Because I was willing to stand there and wait.
Yeah.
And that applies for mediation as well. If you the longer you consider that mediating table, with no matter how uncomfortable it is the more likelihood that you will get the things that you want.
Yeah.
In the negotiation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure true. And that's true in relationships as well. Like a lot of, I'm just thinking like marriage and stuff, right? Like where it's like some of the times you're just like, I don't know how we're gonna solve this, but like we both would want the situation to be different, and just sitting with it, kind of. Yeah, and there is something like uncomfortable, like it is uncomfortable, and you do have to be able to tolerate uncomfortability, and it is hard to have a relationship with someone that can't tolerate being uncomfortable, or their negotiation tactic is to leave.
Well, I mean, that's if you recognize it as a tactic, then you can just maybe you can be with that and pause and just wait for them to come back and be like, so it can
yeah. Yeah.
I can imagine someone would hate that. Like, no, I love it for a reason to de-escalate the situation, not to like keep it on the friction.
Well, you want to be calm, right? Because if you're calm and they get angry and leave, they haven't de-escalated, right?
Right.
If you're yelling at them and they leave, then like, yeah, you're probably the one wrong there. But
there's definitely a skill here with being able to be present to the uncomfortable stuff.
Yeah.
Emotional or pain or anything, really.
Yeah.
Life is like measured in your ability to tolerate discomfort at times. At times when you really need to.
Yeah. That's actually a really interesting thought. I never thought of it that way. Your like life is measured by your ability to be in discomfort. But there's also like a counter to this. Because like there are some people that like they seek out the discomfort. Like unnecessarily.
Yes.
Or to no benefit, I would say.
There does seem to be pointless suffering.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's because like it's not just like discomfort, but it's discomfort on like multiple dimensions. So there's like to give an example, because I know that was very vague. Like the rationalist stuff, right? Like to be a good or even like a decent rationalist, like you have to be able to tolerate discomfort in your changing of beliefs, let's say, and updating. And so you have like a lot of these rationalists that are really good at that, but then they're not good at like having, let's say, interpersonal or experiential.
Other emotional. Other emotional. It seems like, I mean, I gotta go ahead and draw a map here of like layers of mind. So there's a cognitive layer, and there's like belief changing on the cognitive layer, and then there seems like there's an emotional layer, and there's like discomfort on the emotional level, and then there is physical discomfort, where
yeah,
you know, each of those, like the cognitive and the emotional starts to lead into the physical. Like standing there with the guy, my cognitive was like, oh, he's trying to short sell me. My emotional was like, oh, this is uncomfortable, and my physical was like, like I don't want to stand here.
Yeah.
And like my ability to hang out at all three of those levels, my ability to like, you know, there was $1,000 in that discomfort, and you know, afterwards I said to the person, potentially that 5 minutes of me standing there made me $1,000. Like that's $12,000 an hour I'm getting paid. Just being able to be like, no.
Yeah. So like, was it worth it?
Yeah, and you know, in retrospect, it wasn't even that bad, and maybe I should have pushed harder.
You should have gone down 500.
Yeah, I should have stuck to 6,950.
Should have raised the price.
Yeah. Well, you know, the buyer doesn't necessarily know. There was 4 people who tried to call up and buy the car on the first day it was listed, so potentially you should have raised the price.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I've done sales.
It was also up to the buyer. You know, it was not all my deal. It was also the deal of the person selling.
Yeah.
And they thought the car was originally worth $3,000 or something. And
oh, really?
But they listed it for $7,000 and then sold for $6,500. So whatever, everyone was happy in the end. But
yeah.
Would they have sold it for $8,000? Great question.
Yeah.
Who knows? I didn't look at the market myself. And had I more time, and did I know, if I had a bit more notice that I was about to be involved in a negotiation deal, I might have done some more research. But yeah, interesting phenomenon.
Yeah. Yeah, I have done sales before, and a lot of it like the whole thing is just uncomfortable from like start to end.
So I historically had a difficulty putting a value on anything, on myself, on my time, on my possessions. Like in terms of like, oh, an hour of my time is worth this much money, or this possession of mine is worth this much money. Particularly with the conversion of object to dollar. Like, really, I find things personally valuable, but I'm better at it now. But there was a time when I was like, I don't know, nothing's worth anything. Like, what is it worth anyway? And maybe that's a very comfortable, privileged thing to be able to say, that I've never struggled terribly with money so much that I felt the real pain of the value of money.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just like, if I were selling even like an old phone or something, it'd be a bit like, I could go look up what someone else is selling it for and list it at the same price. But if there isn't, like selling an old fridge, like $100, $50.
Yeah, I have a problem with valuating things that that aren't valuable to me at all.
Right. So now it also feels like I have a perspective where I can place a value on an object. Like, this thing has a value in the world, independent of me, and there's an even deeper skill of I can place the value in the object. Like, this isn't just a $100 fridge, this is a $300 fridge. And sort of like, if I don't believe it's worth $300, that buyer's going to show up and offer me $150 and I'll take it, right? I need to actually list it at $300 and then believe that it's worth $300. And that belief structure needs to hold up enough to some discomfort that when a buyer comes along and says $150, I say no. Enough time until it gets to $300. And historically, I haven't been good at holding that belief structure for very long. But it does feel like now I'm better at it.
How did that process work? How did you get better? Or what's the technique you use?
So what it feels like from the inside is like positive sum now. So in trade, right, there's this, I have the fridge and he has the $300, and I would rather $300 in the fridge and he would rather the fridge than the $300. Therefore, we will both make the trade. If he would rather his $300, he won't buy the fridge. Right? If he would rather the fridge plus $100 more than I would rather the fridge plus, then maybe he can bargain me down, right?
Yeah.
And so the trade is dependent on both our sides. Now, if I believe that the fridge is worth $300, then I hold that.
This is capitalism in a nutshell. Like, this is
right. But I need to hold that the fridge has a worth before I can trade it for that worth. Otherwise, I'm not going to carry out.
Right, but if you don't need the fridge, then the fridge has no. Like, if you're not going to use the fridge, or if you're moving and you can't take the fridge with you, it has no value to you.
In fact, if you can't take it with you, it has negative value.
It has negative value because you have to get rid of it.
But if I believe that it's a $500 fridge, and you'll notice it's now a $500 fridge.
Yeah.
If I believe it's a $500 fridge and I'm selling it, then someone might show up and buy it. And if someone shows up to buy it, then success.
Yeah. To me, like, there's this, like, cost of, like, if the guy says no, then I have to find someone else. And, like, that's a pain.
Well, I also, starting to get experience listing things on classifieds, and, like, you know, you list it for $200 more than you think it's worth for a week, and then you drop it down by $50, and then you drop it down by $50 the next week, and then someone gets it at that price, and like you're like, oh, I got it right. Like, you listed it $200 more, and someone calls up. 2 people call up on the same day. You put the price up. Like, it's a supply and demand thing.
Yeah, so you're like playing that market, and you're like getting a felt sense of it,
and like searching for how much this thing sells for in other conditions. Yeah. Also, don't try and sell something at this current moment in time, because at least in my city, there's a lot of people who are usually travelers or backpackers who will buy cheap furniture and that sort of thing, and all of those people went home for Corona, and so now that demand for second-hand furniture is super low. So I tried to sell a dishwasher, and there's hasn't sold. Like there's no demand. Damn. So keep that in mind too. Interestingly.
Yeah. Market fluctuations.
Yes.
That's the thing about markets is like I think that's the appeal of like fixed prices. Fixed pricing is like you don't have to do any research, you just know what the answer is. And there's something like that that's very legible about that.
As in like the fixed price of when you buy it new, or just this is how much?
Yeah, so like I think like what is it, like if you're like back in the day, I think it was for like textbooks, it was like a standard pricing, like new, it's 50% of the new price, I think it was.
Oh, interesting. Right.
And if it was like in good condition, and that was just sort of like the standard price. So you just, when people are selling textbooks, like there's no like demand, right? Because like you could sell for 80% and that would still be worth it. But they're like, no, fair is fair, because it's worth nothing to me, it's worth 100% to you, pretty much. So we'll like split the difference.
Academia thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
right? Like
funny that academia as a world is like neutral, like tries to live in the like ideal possible world, like 0-100 split.
Yeah.
Capitalism would be happy to be like, well, I'm going to sell it for 80%. If you don't want it, buy it from somewhere else. But,
well, capitalism would be like all over the place, right? Like you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Capitalism will be like the original price was marked up.
Yeah, like you have honestly you have no idea, because like the new students coming in, like if the class is one person short, then like if the people coming in, there's one less person, then like that price drops down like to the bottom. But if there's like one more person, then that price shoots all the way up. And so you have to like there's friction in figuring out what the price is. And this is by the way why I think people like stock traders, like day traders or value investors or whatever, like what their job is to decrease that so that the prices are stable and that you don't have to figure it out. Because that's what they're doing. They're just sitting there figuring out stuff all the time, and then they're moving the money around so that it evens out.
Well, it's tricky because you got the random walker face. I don't know. Stock markets are a whole other ballgame. But if you want to talk about psychotechnologies, so much of stock trading is emotional stuff. Oh no, it went up. I better buy more so I don't miss out. Oh no, it's gone down. I'm going to lose my money. I better sell before it
If
drops.
you're doing that, you should not be trading stocks. Like, if you're making emotional decisions, you need to stop doing that, or you're going to lose all your money, and then you will stop doing it.
I want to like slightly caveat that with it's impossible to trade without your emotions being present. It's just don't pretend like you can.
Okay, fine. We're gonna play this game.
and then from there, like learn to work with it as best you can. Knowing that it's impossible.
Yeah.
Really.
To the extent that your emotions are random, is to the extent that you're gonna lose money, and to the extent that your emotions are like backwards or like unintuitive. Whatever it is, there's a calculation here. Your emotions affect your decision making. To the extent that they do that, that's to the extent that you have this impediment.
Yeah.
Unless they're like working for you or whatever,
So there's one group I know of called the Trading Tribe that specifically deal with, like, it's just group therapy basically, childhood stuff, why you can't make money, what you feel like, specifically like noticing when you have like made a terrible trade, and then like exploring what emotion was there, and then being up with other stuff, and then processing it so that it's no longer. And I have a friend who ran a little, like, they have local groups all around the world. It's like a therapy groups. I have a friend who ran it and talked about like sort of equivalent to constellation therapy, working through people's stuff. Like, you know, when I was in the 3rd grade, I was sitting here and the bully was over there, and then he said this, and then I decided this, and whatever, and like working through it, like sitting in the room, putting me here, having someone play the bully and say the sort of thing he would say, and then like have other people in the room, like the teacher who was
like
ignoring us,
recreating that event,
recreating the environment and processing anything that needs to be there, needs to be clear.
Interesting.
And
that's almost like 2-chair, but like more complex.
Potentially, I would love to do constellation therapy. I've never done constellation therapy, but it sounds super interesting. Do you have any idea what? Okay, constellation therapy. You get someone with a scenario, like a childhood scenario. You know, I was 4 and my parents were arguing, and my sibling was 9, and the neighbors knocked on the door and complained. Right? This is the basic scenario. So like, okay, we're gonna put you here. You were sitting on the couch in your living room. Your parents were, where were they? They were to your right. Your dad was here and your mom was there. Who in the room looks like your dad? You pick out someone from the crowd.
Oh shit! This is already triggering me.
And you pick someone out and you put them there, and you know they sort of stand there, so you get the geographic sort of setup. And then okay, who looks like your neighbor? Okay, who looks like your sibling? And then you get people to stand there, right? And then you can do this thing where you'll ask people, and you've given the story a bit of like, they're arguing about mum at dinner and dad's at home late, and my sibling is trying to play video games and I'm just trying to like block my ears, and then my neighbor knocks on the door, right? This is what's going on, right? And so we've given everyone the scenario, and then we check in with everyone. And so we say to the sibling, what's going on? How are you feeling, this person who's sitting playing video games, pretending to play the video games? And the sibling, the person goes like, it feels something like, this happens a lot, and this is my coping mechanism, this is how I learned to tune it out. And you're like, oh, that's interesting, because that's not what the scenario said. You sort of like harness some extra information, and then you go to the person who's playing the dad. You say, what's going on? And the person who's playing dad says, I'm really stressed at work, I nearly got fired, everyone else is incompetent, I'm about to get blamed for everything, and no one listens to me, and now my wife is yelling at me, you know. And then you say to the person playing the wife, like, what's going on? And you can like, somehow these people just have information, and
yeah, because they're embodying something, so the character is like talking to them or whatever.
Right.
Artist
and so
stuff, yeah.
the neighbor knocks on the door, and so you get the person who's playing the neighbor, and you say, why did you knock on the door? And the person who's playing the neighbor is like, it seems like this is going on, or like they can pull stuff out of the air, you know, like the neighbor's like, I walked past the house and like the sprinklers were on for too long, and so I knocked on the door because something was wrong. I felt like something was wrong, so I knocked on the door. And like you can get all the pieces of the puzzle sort of lining up, and like and more importantly, the person who is playing the role of the neighbor will be like, oh, this is like the time that I in my own life, that I saw something was wrong and I felt like I should have gone and I didn't, and the person playing the neighbor will do some personal repair around that phenomena, and the person who you picked as dad is also having a work-life problem in a similar shape, and the person you picked as sibling is also having a problem like that. Everyone gets to do their own work in the crazy constellation therapy stuff.
That's crazy.
Wacky. I've never done it, and I would love to. I'm just so fascinated by the whole idea.
Yeah. It sounds kind of intense. Like, yeah, like I don't know that I would feel comfortable facilitating that.
Well, the facilitator is like, you know, like a ghost in the room, like floats around and goes like, what's going on for you?
Yeah, but like until like they start yelling at each other, everyone loses their own shit in their own worlds, and now you have a room
that's probably the other thing. You could be like, okay, what do you this person have to say to that person?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Like that sounds like fun, actually.
Yeah.
Like it sounds like fun as long as I'm not in charge. Like if it's somebody else's to blame if it all goes badly, it sounds fun.
As a psychotechnology, I'm sure it's fascinating and amazing.
Yeah.
I've never done it, and I've not seen it done. Like I've not witnessed it happening, and I've not known anyone who has hosted it. But I would be fascinated to play with it.
Yeah. I'd love to do that too.
Yeah. Anyway, Psychotechnologies.
I bet like artists do that. Like not artists, but like actors.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of improv as a psychotechnology as well.
Yeah. Because like someone's doing something, they're playing something, and then like you like, what if you could just like stop halfway through and be like, "What are you doing? Like, where's this coming from?"
Yeah.
Right. Like they get really into the scene, they're doing the thing, and you're like, "What are you drawing on? Like, let's go to that source and examine that."
Yeah. A lot of acting is secretly spirituality. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Something deeper within us. We're accessing patterns of what it is to be human. We're like connecting with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're just like acting, like you're on one level, you're just lying. Like you guys are just lying to each other, like in public.
Well, lying, but also minds have patterns, right?
Yeah.
The way in which our psyche forms is deeply patterned.
Yeah, so they're finding patterns that sort of tell a bigger story. Sorry.
The way in which, like, I was going to call Eliot today, and we captured, what did we call it? We called it so the quality of a person who could be expectation following. And we couldn't quite find the perfect word for it, but that sort of...
Sorry, the quality of a person that could be expectation following?
So someone who could really follow expectations quite well. So that's very close to, like, responsible or reliable. I think, like, kind of reliable. And like, just knowing that, and the way the person said it, I could be like, oh, you mean, like, reliable as in it's boring to be that reliable. Like, there's a downside to that. And there's a way in which the mind can link up reliable to, like, do the same thing all the time and go like, oh, but that'll be boring, and then not like to be reliable because it's like close to boredom or something. Yeah. That's a universal pattern in the way consciousness goes reliable, that could be boring. It's got nothing to do with that person, that scenario, and that experience. Everyone has, or can imagine.
Everyone has some of that for sure.
Right.
Or else they're...
To the extent that people can work through it, they can be able to be more reliable and be okay being boring in order to get access to the fruits of reliable boredom. But there's something universal about human consciousness. Where if it is reliable, that could be boring.
Yeah.
And so acting is often tapping into what we don't know, but it is quite universal.
That's really interesting. And then you're like sort of like really embodying that pattern in a way, in like a safe environment, like in a way that like it's not gonna really affect your life. Because like you can play this like if you're acting, like you can play this pattern that you mentioned, or you can play like you can play like a psychopath. And you can like actually act like a psychopath, and people will. And if you do a really good job, people will give you awards. But if you do that in real life, bad things happen.
Right, but there's something interesting here where the subset of mental health is pathologized into certain disorders, and there's this curious question of like, are those disorders distinctly different from the rest of us? Or does everyone exist on a spectrum from completely not that thing to all the way with like the extreme pathologies?
Yeah, I 100% believe all the pathologies like are, or like at least the psychological ones are within us.
Right. So yeah, I have this, following yesterday's previous conversation on metaphysical anatomy and the way that everything is linked. I again draw a great question mark of like, are they all spectrums, or are some of them like, you know, it is possible that your anatomy can be like, you can be born without a hand or something, like you can have fundamentally different anatomy from
that's why I said the psychological. Like I think the neurological might be a little more complicated.
Right. So but somehow we can still, like, psychopathology is meant to be more neurological, but somehow we can still act that way. So there's some curiosity there as to, like, what's going on, and how is it that we, if it's that different, that we can still act that way?
Well, the pattern's still there, but I think like, let's say borderline is the one that keeps coming to mind when you were talking, because it's like, I think that's kind of like what you're describing, where it's like you don't want to be predictable. Like, I'm not saying that's what borderline is, but I'm saying, like, this is like an aspect of it, which is like, but like in a way that makes you predictable, right? Because you know, like, as soon as the person notices what's going on, they're going to react. Which makes them, like, very, and there's only a couple ways you can react, so you actually wind up being very predictable in, like, a different way. But like that's still there. Like, I can still do that. I just can't do it all the time. Because it's exhausting. But it's exhausting to them too. But like, there's like sort of natural patterns. Like, for me, like my one is like the depression, but where there's no natural blockage for that. So this
is a I want to, like, focus slightly onto autism as a topic, and I know where we're up to in the world is we're up to autism spectrum disorder. That's what they call it. Asperger's isn't quite a thing anymore, and it's like autism, and it's all on a spectrum, and it's blah blah blah. I have this curiosity because I consider myself the, like, what I would have called the aspie whisperer. I'm gonna change my terms.
Yeah.
But I have this very comfortable ability to communicate to anyone who's autistic just completely fine. Like, it makes a lot of sense. They're very simple. Like when they mean what they say when they say it. Like, I have absolutely no problem communicating with them, and I'm not autistic. I really don't fall on the spectrum at all. And so, but somehow, like, if all of psyche, all of the mental health phenomena are on a spectrum, do I have access to that spectrum? Do I lean in so that I can understand them, and then lean out so I can access the normal world and normal people? Like, what's going on there? So
yeah, I think all rationalists tend to have, like, some aspie character. Because, like, when I came to the community, I met, like, people like whenever I meet somebody that's like, I haven't really, like, met anyone that's, like, really actually I have, but, like, not when they're, like, really far, it's hard for me to relate. But like, when they're like in there, I'm like, oh, like, I get it, like, you're so normal. like we think the same, this makes sense. But
I actually laugh sometimes because it seems like things are built into the culture. Like, the culture of logic and evidence and, like, systematized.
Yeah.
Is so built in that it's like, oh, this culture was built by autistics for other autistics.
For autistics, yeah. And I'm like, that's why it makes so much sense. Because they're just like this. But then you miss out, like, yeah, there's all this, like,
You made a link just then that I don't think I had enough evidence to make yet, which is that, well, I think of rationality, or, like, as the logic, reasoning, cognitive culture. Like, it's really pushing for that, like, make things explainable, make things understandable, be scientific in our reasoning process.
Yeah.
But to propose that autism is a subset of the mind being understandable, or staying in the understandability territory,
yeah,
is a link that I had. And therefore, logic and reasoning, and the, like, obviously the natural extreme being the culture built around rationality being a natural extension of autism. Well, it sounds obvious now that I've said it, but I'm like, oh yeah, I wasn't necessarily building that link there before. Or, like, a desire to it's something like a desire to have the world be legible and understandable.
Yeah. I think this is a very, like,
and possibly a strong belief that it is legible and understandable if you put in enough time and effort and hours to uncover.
Yeah, like, that's sort of, I think that one's a little bit more of, like, That might, yeah, like that might be like more like a little inherent belief that, but whatever, yeah, like that's.
That one feels more like a belief than an absolute truth, but the culture is built on it. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but yeah. So like that's what it is, and it's like okay, like I think reality is not that way, in the sense that like black boxes exist and sort of have to exist from a like computational perspective. But like, yeah, I mean that's really what got me. Is like the complexity stuff, where like that helped me really transcend that. Where it's like the complexity and like AI, things like that. Where it's like, well, actually, like there is all this processing that you if you actually don't know what's going on, you can actually know more, or you can make better decisions than if you have to know what's going on. Like being able to deal with uncertainty,
right?
And that letting go and being and living in uncertainty and realizing that you were. This is like a big meditation one, right? Like with like the stream entry and stuff, where you're realizing you never knew what was going on in the first place. So,
right. Well, did we say earlier? Minds. I didn't think we said today. Minds desperately want a platform to like a stable ground. You did mention, right? And they set like the atom world or the God-based world.
Oh yeah, that's what you're talking about before. Yeah.
Your base metaphysic is your desperate need to make understanding of the world in some shape.
Yeah.
And in order to deal with the level of uncertainty that we face in our little universe.
Yeah, and so like so like a really good base is like rationality, logic, math, things like that, right? Like those are really good, like base, like it's a really fucking solid base that's like very hard to disrupt, but that's only the external, right? Like that's great for like science and stuff. Like if the processing is taking place outside you, then that's a solid base. If it's taking place inside you, at the end of the day, like I know for me is like if I'm doing a math problem, math is correct, but that doesn't mean I'm correct. Like I may have made a mistake. Like I could forget to carry a 1, and that doesn't mean addition or subtraction is wrong. It means that I can't implement it properly. And so it doesn't matter how good that foundation is if I can't use it properly. I mean, it does matter, but it doesn't matter in my choices. Right? Because even if you give me the most rational...
I don't want to factor in some human error into your...
Yeah. And the second you factor in human error and you start looking at that, the whole thing kind of... I don't want to say the whole thing falls away, because it's still out there and it's still useful, but its foundation... The problem is if you don't realize it, then the foundation is cracked and you think it's you that's cracked. Because it's you that's cracked. But everyone's cracked. So that's just how humans work.
Through technology, everyone's on crack.
Everyone's psyche is cracked. Like you're not, like no one's like, no, everything I do is perfect and I do the best decision in every scenario, right? Like it's...
Well, if they are, they're wrong. If they say so.
Yeah, like I don't even think anyone says so nowadays. Like
narcissists say that.
Yeah. Rationalist narcissists are not good. Like you're just fucked at that point. Like you're just like stuck in this thing, and like how do you get out of that?
So there's this interesting an interesting pattern that is worth observing from the lens of psychotechnologies is problems that block themselves from being solved.
Oh.
Particularly like blind spots. So if you're so angry that you can't see that you're angry, or you're angry at yourself being angry, or you have a desperate need to see things as legible and logical, and that is causing you great pain and suffering in such a way that you cannot detect because you're too busy trying to get things to be legible and logical first.
Yeah, if you're
like the attitude, the original attitude is wrong in that it puts you, it's like looking in all the wrong places. So.
Yeah. Like to me it's like there's this belief that everything makes sense, and like I actually do believe that.
But if you hold that too strongly, then
no, I just don't believe that I could necessarily figure that out. So like so like I like
the saving belief you got there.
Yeah, but that took a while to figure out. But but there's also the other belief like you could figure out most things. Like there are like not everything, but like you could pretty much figure out anything that you want to. I'm not saying like P equals NP, like whatever. Like there are like obviously a lot of things you can't, but like realistically, like you could figure out anything, but you can't figure out everything because like you just don't have the time.
People, there's something called the Akashic records. Which is one of those weird spiritual hippie things.
I'm not familiar with that.
Which is something like what you described. Everything is knowable.
Yeah, I kind of like everything is knowable, or everything is the things that aren't knowable are provable that they're not knowable, or that thing is not provable. Like at the end of the day, you could hit a point. Like you can pretty much for everything. Yeah.
Yep. That seems right.
Yeah. See, I do believe that, but then there's like this acceptance of like if you have this belief, you have to accept that like you can't figure it out and you're just wrong, and like that's okay. Like you'll still be able to survive if you don't know what's going on. And to a certain extent, it's easier, and in a lot of ways, it's easier once you accept uncertainty.
When I first...
Because you can react quicker.
When I first made my leap from rational to other...
What is it? Post-rational? Whatever. Just psychotechnologies.
well, the difficulty is there isn't a name for it from the rational perspective. It would have been from the rational frame. It's from rational to other. But from the other, well, obviously it was a post-rational, different holistic way of thinking. But when I first made that transition, I think one of the sort of mistakes that I was making prior, and I mention this because I think it's quite common, is that I had put fear and a variety of discomfort in with the unknown, and so the unknown is bad and scary in some way. And after making this leap, or part of making that leap was recognizing that the unknown is literally just the unknown, and yes, there could be monsters in the unknown or bad and scary things in the unknown, but in fact the unknown isn't inherently good or bad or containing monsters or containing benefit. Some people are endless explorers. They keep going for new explorations.
Yeah, I'm not that way.
And that's also, that can be bad too.
Yeah.
If they think that all good things are in the unknown, that can be bad. And if someone thinks that all bad things are in the unknown, that can be bad too. But it strikes me that there's this class of mistake that I was making where the unknown was scary bad. And I think that it's quite common to be afraid of the dark or afraid of the unknown in such a way that we stop exploring and then later have to go and recover our sense of acceptance of what we don't know. Particularly because in every moment of experience in existence, there are things that I do know, like I can see my room around me, and things that I don't know. Like I don't know if there is someone outside my house here. I don't know, like, there's just things that I do not currently know. Like there's what I'm paying attention to, and there's even like what I'm not paying attention to in this room. And so the unknown is so close all the time that if we are unprepared to be okay with it being there and accept it, then it can just like oppress us from all sides. And particularly, I was living in the like, from the rational side, I was living in the known systems, right? I would go read more textbooks, I would gain more known knowledge.
You're like looking under the lamppost.
Building the map by like traveling known paths and understanding it. And that became a really, like, that was great. That was a really great foundation for like, here's all the things we know, and or the psychology textbook and the linguistics textbook and the economics textbook. And I was like, oh, I'm building these maps. I'm getting the known, the shape of the known territory. And then when I flipped over to the unknown, I was like, oh, the known territory is like, think of like branches or like veins, right? Like the body system sort of maps these corridors of space, like we have veins mapping, like branching trees through the unknown, which is these are the areas that we've researched and we know biology, we know chemistry, and we've separated them and we've described them in these ways. But actually, the entire territory is fundamentally unknown first, and then we start mapping it out and like going down these winding paths down them. And so there's a thing where my map only existed of these like branches of known, and then suddenly have that flip to, oh, there's everything else here.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I'm trying to describe it. It's confusing to.
Yeah, it's
like say, oh, there's everything else here, and this is what we know within it. Like that was really exciting, and you know, I went a little bit gibberishy. Like my ability to talk to scientific people fell off the deep end.
Yeah, that happens once you do that switch. Like you lose, you lose everything because the whole frame is gone.
Right.
But the new frame is more powerful anyway.
Yeah, and I feel like now I've integrated much better, and I can travel worlds and be comfortable in both. But I was super fascinated in the unknown one for a while, and that caused me to like. I kept falling off the map for my poor scientific friends who couldn't follow me off the map.
Yeah.
And I don't know for certain if
because they're like, where are you? You're like, I don't have coordinates. We're not on the map.
Yeah. So it's fascinating, interesting stuff to talk about because it was a great period of growth for me. I love finding and realizing, but there was something very scary about. What if there's a bad thing in the unknown, and I've avoided it for this long because I didn't know what was there, and then I peeked there, and it was like, oh, this is okay. But I wasn't ready to peek there because I was very much like, what if it's bad? And then
I'm curious about that. Like how did you, like I know how I kind of transitioned with that, but how did you transition from? Because like you have the unknown and you explore it, but then it's known, right? So it's not unknown anymore. So how do you like be comfortable with like the concept or the idea of the unknown?
Right. So
or the experience.
Definitely the first time I first broke open the new territory, and then I found myself back on the map, as you described. You explore, and you're like, here I am, I've explored this area. But there's other unknowns, and you have to know that they're there and that they're unknowable in some sense. And you need to be able to be present to the unknowable and be okay with that while accepting what you already know. So there's like the first time...
So like having like a known unknown and then like I guess becoming friends with it or something, or having a relationship with it.
Right. And like it's sort of like being aware of that it is that they're having the relationship. So at first I was like, this is cool, and then I explored it, and then it was explored. And then I had to go find other unknown, or like a hang of being with the unknown without having to go explore it, and so that I can be present to possible future unknowns that I haven't met yet. And like, instead of being blindsided by them, I'm present. I'm like, I will be like, oh, there is some unknown coming into the room with us here, and I'm not sure what it is yet. So I can do that as opposed to like suddenly being blindsided by something.
So like, sorry, I'm not sure I caught that last part, but it's
Right.
my mind drifted.
For example,
that's what these things is, that like it could just like slide slightly and then we're off, because we're already kind of off the map to some extent. I don't even know if anybody can do this.
Right? Rationalist territory, and we've talked about this before, they're not very good at their emotions. That's just like how it is. As you
because emotions are irrational, so why bother?
I don't know. I don't think they're irrational. They seem to follow a very specific pattern, but they're not the logical pattern that you might anticipate. They've got their own pattern to them, which takes a bit longer to really piece together. But so there I was in the rational.
Yeah, but that pattern is that they're irrational. But I get you.
I discovered the emotional, right? And this is the a new unknown territory. And so then I went there and I started exploring what they were and how they worked and how they interacted with each other. And so as I explored it, that territory became known, right? But it was not true that all unknowns had become known. It was only that territory that I just found had become known. Right? So now I had my usual logical rational and my emotional. And so I had two territories. And somewhere else out there, there's still unknown. And so, and I don't know where it is right now, necessarily. So here I am playing with these, and someone does I'm in conversation with someone, maybe I'm encircling, and someone does an emotional movement that is novel and like moves through a territory that I'm like, oh, I felt something change, but I don't know what that was. I'm like, cool. It's not that I was blindsided by it, it's that I felt it, but I didn't know what it was. And instead of feeling uncomfortable, like, oh no, that was scary weird, it's like, okay, cool. There's some unknown here that I'd like to learn about. And so I made the mistake at this point of getting super interested in trying to like, hey, what did you do there? And like,
dude, that's what circling is awesome for, because you could just do that and be like, oh, I'm curious what was going on for you in this moment, and like, people would
unfortunately there's a lot of me like projecting on the other person, like they did something like deliberate.
But that's where like that like waiting comes in, because you're like, there's something there, but I don't know where it is, and I don't know necessarily how to access it, and I don't know how to, and I don't think that they're aware of it. But you can kind of like watch it go through, and then you can see that pattern, and then you see the pattern, and then like once you've seen it a couple times, you can.
Right. So there's some projection-y stuff there that I had to work on and do less of, so that I didn't.
It's like people watching. Circling is like people watching, but you got to see what's inside.
Yeah. I did this thing where I really liked skillful movement, like people who could skillfully do an emotional or like maybe a more subtle movement. I really super interested, and so then I projected that they were like skillful and knowledgeable in many domains if they could do those moves, whereas in fact those people often had like a bunch of blind spots but had this one weird trick. And so I tied myself up in knots, because I was like, how do they do that? What are they doing?
No, but that's good. That's good. That's like the difference between AGI and just like specific AI. Because if you're like, it has to make sense across all the domains, then what you've done is you haven't learned the trick, but you've learned all the domains. You have a much stronger understanding of all the domains.
Right.
And so that's the thing that produces the one weird trick.
I had to unlearn that habit of like, this person is amazing because they have that one weird trick.
Yeah, you got to stay real. Like, do they know this? Do they not know this? Like,
Yeah. And so now I'm a bit more like, I'm okay with like subject matter experts now, when I used to be like, when there was a subject matter expert who knew things that I didn't about the subject matter, I like projected everything on them. And now I'm like, no, you could be a subject matter expert in this way without like covering the rest of my territory.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I love that. Like being able to like figure out what they're a subject matter expert in, and then you can actually test that, right? Like you can throw out blind spots, or you can throw out like the scenario, and stuff like that. And that's I think is like a big key to the psychotechnologies, right? Like this is the thing I think people also they think it's like all about the technique or whatever, but a lot of the times it's just it's just frame shifting, right? Like you're just well,
what willingness to be with the unknown in some way.
Yeah,
yeah. Psychotechnologies, they penetrate deeper than just the known technique. They're like the attitude of how you approach the next problem, with or without. Okay, let's try this technique.
Yeah, that's the real ones. I think people they tend to, I think a little bit of like they tend to like want to stick to like this kind of meditate, like meta is the thing that we're doing. But it's like
for me, the like very structured known psychotech methods was like a stepping stone.
Yeah.
Started with those. I started with here's the 10-step process. I got really fluent at the 10-step process, and then I integrated that, put that in the back of my mind, and then I use it sometimes. But like going through that, it's not that going through that was the wrong move. Ultimately, it's that going through that was a stepping stone for me in terms of building better tools. And now I don't use it at all, that particular method, but I have the like how to build a method, how to 7-step it, how to like all these other things that now I can rest on that as another platform of information that I can grow from.
All right.
So like there's a cautionary mistake of like don't cling too hard to the instructions, but actually what I found was that I clung to the instructions, I got the hang of them, and then I didn't need to cling to them anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends I think where you're at, because often
I can see people who cling to instructions from time to time who shouldn't, and I can see people who desperately need instruction who should just follow damn instructions.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Everyone thinks they're smarter than the instructions. Not everyone, but
I'm thinking of some people who.
Some people think they're smarter than the instructions. It's
like, dude, and I do understand that, but
like if you were to follow it for 10 minutes, you would know you couldn't do it.
Right. I know some people who really crave clear instructions and really benefit from them when they get them.
Yeah.
They're like, just tell me what to do and I can follow it, and like, wow, that makes sense, and then they can integrate it.
They're
in the learning phase. They're picking up tools.
Yeah. And that's good. Like, you should be doing that. Like, you should be trying all the things. And, like, legitimately trying them, right? Which is, like... and that's where I think the outcomes come in. Because I like it when you have instructions, and then you're like... And then this is the result you're going to get. Like, for cooking, I almost always work backwards, where I'm like, what is the thing that we're trying to do? And then I'm like, how do I do that? And then I look at the recipe, and I'm like, oh, that's a really good way of doing that. And then it's like, because then I understand the recipe.
Like, I want to make a chocolate cake, and then I go look up the chocolate cake recipe.
Yeah, or even if it's just like an interesting recipe. Like even if I'm looking at the recipe, I'm still looking at the end result, right? Like, but yeah, because like for me, it's like chocolate cake. I'm like, how do I do that again? I forgot. Yeah, but if I'm just having a recipe, it just feels like I'm doing random stuff, and like. Some details really matter and some details don't, and I don't know which ones are which. But if I have that like higher, I guess it's like a higher level of abstraction of like, because like if you're just doing the like following, let's say, a recipe, but if you know what the end product is, then you're at a higher level of abstraction than if you don't. Because then I'll know, I'm like, oh, this doesn't matter. Like I can just replace these things, or I can it's not a big deal, or oh no, this thing is actually super important that you have to do it or it's not going to work.
A couple of years ago, I was in uni, and some of my friends were doing cooking when they replaced some ingredients for other ingredients, and somehow they decided to replace the sugar for salt in a recipe.
Oh, that's not even edible.
Yeah, like what? What kind of... I mean, this is a person who had managed to enter into university degree. Like they were not dumb enough.
These university people are domain experts. Oh.
Right. There's just
I use the experts in quotes.
In the end, I don't know if that person continued with university, but this person was smart enough to get in, and was like, yeah, I guess you're right. Domain knowledge.
This is the thing. People think academics are so smart because they do things that are really smart, but.
I like to say that there are book smarts and street smarts, and they're really only suitable in the domain that they are designed for.
Yeah.
If you take street smarts to book smarts, you're going to get laughed out, and if you take your book smarts onto the streets, you're going to get stabbed. Like it's really it's a domain skill thing. You need that wisdom in the right place.
Yeah. Yeah, and you need the wisdom to know when you're not wise. Yeah. That's like the first thing you should learn.
And you need both, realistically, to live a good life. You need both.
Yeah. Do you?
Like, you do need both. You need to be able to go to the doctor and say, "I have this wrong with me. Can you help?" And tell whether the doctor is competent and functional and giving you good advice, and you need to be able to, and that's for if you only have street smarts, right? You can't go to the doctor, you can't interface very well with the system, you can't save and invest money, you can't come up with long-term plans because you don't have the...
Yeah, I mean, functionally, yeah, you're right. I think theoretically there's ways around those, but just from my experience in the real world,
yeah. And the same for book smarts.
Because there's ways around it, but you have to know the ways around it.
Right, which is smarts.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, for book smarts, one day you will be in that zone of territory that is out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to go to the emergency room. You're going to have to be in a foreign city without any friends. You're going to have to somehow be out of your comfort zone and work out how to navigate it. And for that, you really do need at least enough street smarts to not get stabbed or have your money stolen from you.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're very trapped.
Yeah.
Because you can't do anything.
Yeah.
And that's not a good life.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, life is crazy. It's just nuts. I just remember what I thought life was when I was like a kid or a teenager or whatever, and then my understanding of it now, and I'm like, dude, this is so many of the things I was right, and also it doesn't matter. You missed the point. It's just it's so different and weird in such unique ways. In all the ways.
Life is pretty incredible, ridiculous.
Amazing. Yeah. And it will always be like that. I will never, you're the unknowns. I'm oh, maybe I'll just know everything. No, I won't. I won't even know. Forget a fraction of the things. It's I didn't realize it's so, there's not infinite things. There's infinite things. There's infinite things. There's infinite categories of things that can themselves contain infinite things that themselves contain categories of it just it's not even a number.
Wherever you turn the mind, there is an infinite number of things in that direction.
Yeah, and there's an infinite amount of directions to turn the mind.
Well, is there? I think there is a finite but very large number of places you can turn the mind.
That is a frame. But you don't have to be in that, that frame might have a finite, but you don't have to be in that frame. So there's infinite frames.
I suppose, alright, yeah. If you believe that imagination is infinite, you can just imagine anything, then
those are
your mind.
Yeah, I think imagination is infinite, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can imagine everything. But
no, as in, if imagination is infinite, then the mind has an infinite directions it can turn. Because there are infinite ways in which you can observe.
Yeah, and that's just one that's just one part of like infinite infinities. Because there's also like the outside world, right? So like you can like just let go of your imagination and just experience what's happening, and like just go somewhere you've never been, like that house over there on your street that you just never went to.
I was more saying that because if you can perceive that the imagination is infinite in the potential that it can access and observe, then the mind must have the capacity to turn infinitely in various directions, inside or out.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're using the imagination. But to conceptualize this, you could use the imagination as a proxy for, as long as you could, if you feel like the imagination could be infinite and endless, then that means that the mind could do all of those things, and it has access with, or like, not using the imagination, like observing the outside world, but it has to be endless as the imagination in its quality of endlessness in potential.
Well, its effect on us would be that, yeah.
Yeah. There seems to be a finite number of atoms in the universe, but there's also quite a lot of them. And then even that.
Well, the atoms in the universe are functionally infinite, even if they're not like technically infinite.
Yeah, fair enough. I would take that. That's Yep.
And then it's the configurations, right? And then that's where everything comes in, right? Like even if it's like, well, there like however many like things there are, there's I don't even know the words. I wish I knew more math. I'd be able to describe this better. But it's the exclamation mark where you times everything by. But it's not even that. Like it's bigger than that.
Yeah, it's the like power after power after power.
Yeah, and then you add in time. Like fuck. like I don't know. Like technically there probably is a number, because it's
we happen to exist in a very specific subset of the entire possible universe space.
Yeah, well, yeah, like that is the number, but it's like, you know that one that a card deck. So if you take a deck of cards and you shuffle them, probably that configuration has never happened.
Oh really?
Yeah.
52 factorial. Oh. 52 factorial.
Yeah. Like it probably has never happened in the history of the universe. Which is insane. Like that, like I don't know. To me, that's insane, and that's like such a small number relative to like the things that are going on here. So like each, when I say like each moment is unique, like it's uniquely unique on multiple levels. And that's the cool thing, because no matter how rational you are, you don't know what's going to happen in the next moment. And if you do, you don't know what's going to happen in the one after. Right? Like, like I just have to wait, like no one can predict the next moment, but even if they could, like even if someone thinks they can, like there is a point where they just can't. And if or at least like they can't in a way that's like this is a rational concept that I love, is ideas need to pay rent. So like even if you think you can predict it, like is that paying rent? Like are you gaining something from that? And if not, you're just, I don't know, you're just an idiot. Like, I don't know what to say. Like you think you're smart, but you're an idiot.
So I googled it real quick because I was like, is the deck cards thing true? There are between 10 to the 78 to 10 to the 82 atoms in the observable universe, and there are 8 times 10 to the 67 is the 52 factorial. So 10 to the 67 versus 10 to the 80, whatever it was.
So there are more atoms in the universe than there are deck configurations.
Right, but not by like, I assume if you added another couple of cards on there, then there wouldn't be. Let's see, like it's 53.
How many cars do you need for there to be more configurations than there are atoms in the universe?
54.
But even the universe, like that's just like the observable universe is just how far light can travel before it just can that light reach us essentially. That's what the observable universe.
That's not the observable. I thought it's the total universe, not just the observable.
No, the total universe is impossible to know.
Oh.
At least with our physics. Because when we say universe, we mean the observable universe. Because
60 factorial gets us pretty close to. I feel like I should check 61.
I don't think it matters.
Yeah, 61 factorial is more atoms than there are in the universe. Wow. So if the bank of cards had 61 rather than 60.
Oh, you know this one, the circumference of the universe, like to calculate the circumference of the universe to the size of an atom requires something like, it's like something like 7 digits of pi or something. Like it's something like really small. And like, you know, like these people that like memorize like 200.
Oh, you mean 3.141592653589.
Yeah, like you're done. Like you will never need to know this. No human will ever need to know this, like unless they're doing like whatever, something human like. But yeah, like that information is useless.
Yeah. Well, I didn't do 200. I got about 50 digits.
You got 50 digits? Do you still know it?
It was something. Well, like that was about 20, 25, 30.
Damn.
It's just a string of numbers. I was really bored in high school. Something wrong with our high school system because I was really.
Yeah, me too. I learned how to do. This thing.
Like, oh yeah, I have that one. I can do that.
And then I can do it with like the coin on the fingers.
Oh yeah.
Like not sexy. Like I can't do it well, but I can do it.
Yeah, I learned the coin one too from Pirates. Pirates the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Like I can learn that.
Yeah. I can't do it like well. Like I can't do it like an impressively, like to impress the girls, but I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like those numbers are useless. like I get like you're memorizing, it's just string numbers and all that stuff. I
was very bored in high school. That's why I got them. But yes, definitely useless.
Yeah. and like this is a thing where like this is looking under the street lamp. I think when people take this stuff like super seriously, it winds up being. This is the question actually that sort of got me out of the rationalist mindset. Is okay, fine, like rationality, thinking, good, yeah, but like what's the question you're trying to answer?
Like in the universe?
No, like you can use rationality to find out anything, let's say, but like what is it that you're trying to find out?
Oh, the question tends to not come from rationality itself. It tends to come from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Rationality to answer.
Yeah, and it should be like rationally informed to a certain extent. Like you're not just doing random but the thing is you're not doing random questions, right? Like your questions, the things you're interested in, depends on who and when and stuff. But there is a field. Let's say there is a field of interest that is generated within a person or something, and like within that space is things that are more important, less important, and like you can kind of use rationality, but like also really you can't. Like there is spaces where you can't.
Let me try this. So the best I've seen rationality used for is to set a structure within which you can then fill in. So like, for example, if I ask the question, what do you care about? that question, like, can set the framework, or like, what's important to you can set the framework for then you to fill in, so the rationality can create the scaffold for you to like answer those questions.
Say more, because I was going to say the opposite, actually. I was going to say the rationality can't really tell you what you want. I mean, once you get, like, there's some of the
rationality doesn't answer those questions. And it doesn't tell you necessarily which question you should be asking now.
Yeah.
But it can help you scaffold for answers.
Yeah. Like, once you ask the question, then you want to be using rationality, I think. Unless the question is, like, sometimes people do, like, rhetorical questions and stuff, which I absolutely hate, even though I also do them sometimes.
Say that again. Once you ask the question, you want to be using rationality.
Once you ask the question, you're like, this question is important for me to answer, then you can use rationality.
Right. Okay.
There's things like koans and stuff. Koans? I'm never sure how it's pronounced. Like the sound of a one-handed clap, right? Like you're not supposed to use rationality to answer that because you've missed the point. Like you're not. It's not about the answer. It's about like finding the answer or something. Or it's about what happens in your mind when you think about the answer. But like if you're like, no, this is an important question, we need to answer it. Like you should be using rationality. And I think when like post-rationalists or whatever don't do that, like they're wrong. Or they're using it as a proxy, which is what I think they often do. Which I think is not good.
There's more here in terms of types of questions or if you like. So if you start with a question like, what do you care about? And then you get to the like, I care about the people around me being happy. Then that will naturally lead me to ask the question, well, of rationality, how do I live in a world where I keep the people around me being happy?
Yeah.
And then I should answer that question with rationality.
Yeah, and that's a hard question, and I don't think you're really going to find the full answer to that.
Right.
But you should be using rationality to get as much as you can.
So there's a way where the first question of what do I care about, right? It's like an opening, like it's an open question. What do I care about? And then when I contract around, I care about the people around me being happy. That leads to the following question is a closed question of how do I do that? Or maybe that can be an open question too.
Well, it's always going to be open because you're never really going to find the answer to that. But you're
right.
But you can still approach it with a rational perspective, right? Like you can still say like, okay, let's operationalize it. Like, what does happy mean,
right?
Or what does people around me mean? And then you can start doing, you can form hypotheses. You could be like, well, I'll do this, and then you can test it and see if they're happier or less happy. And like happiness is one of those ones that are like really hard.
Tricky example, but you know,
but I think that's a good one because it's tricky, right? Where it's like I don't think our happiness science or whatever. I don't know if that's a thing, but it's not really like there, but it's not there. Like there are definitely things you can do that will make people happier and less happy.
My like quick take on happiness is there's like momentary happiness and then there's like longer-term meaning making. Mm-hmm. And what we actually probably want is we want longer-term meaning making.
What we should want is that, yeah.
As in, that's when we talk about I want to be happy, that's what we want. What we actually want is the longer-term meaning making rather than the momentary happiness.
Yeah. And
the momentary happiness will come easier when there's longer-term meaning making.
Yeah. And I think
Psychotechnologies board game over there. Big rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, do you think we could make a board game? You think that'll be a good idea?
Oh gosh, I was about to say I'm aware of the time and we should probably wrap up shortly. But Psychotech board games, maybe we can think about that next time. What would it look like?
I do you think it's like I'm picturing, I'm not saying we have to go this route, but I'm picturing Monopoly, and then like you've got like instead of the railroads, you've got the Jonas.
with like some sort of winding trail path, something or other, and your little pieces, people move around the board. We roll the dice and move around the board, and possibly, I could imagine like maybe there are 20 to 30 different psychotechnologies. A shape on a board, and you roll a dice and you move 6 squares or 3 squares up, and then you like pick up this card or that card, and maybe there's a question like, what do you care about? Or maybe there's a question of like,
oh yeah, dude, that would be cool. Like you have to answer like these like personal things, or like,
right.
Can you hold this state? Like you have to hold this state, and if somebody like calls you out, you didn't.
Right. Different types of technologies, different types.
Oh, dude, that'd be a sick drinking game. Can you imagine like a drinking game where it's like circling or something? Like you have to do like I notice statements or just like that, and if you don't, then you have to take if you like mess up, you have to take a drink. But like it's like time, so they're like always switching.
This is a fun idea, and I want to think more about it.
Yeah, we're gonna make millions off of this.
My main question is, do I have enough psychotechnologies that I could fit them into it? Like, do I have enough?
Yeah, probably.
Probably do. I'll think
probably
about it.
Not that hard because you don't need that many, right? Like a Monopoly board is it's less than 40.
I think it is squares. 10 by 10 each side or so?
Yeah, but the corners are overlapping. So it's 10. It's like 9 by 8. I forgot how to do that. See, I wish I was better at math.
10, 10, 8, 8, right?
Sure, yeah. So it's 30... 36.
Yes.
Yeah, 36, yeah. Yeah, I had that right. Yeah, it's 36. I guess that, and then you just sort of roll the dice and people land on it, and then you have to do the thing until your next turn or something.
Yeah, or like, I guess there are different types. There would be like, we do this for 5 minutes, or you have to hold this for 10 minutes till your next turn, or different types of things.
Yeah. Yeah. Give like secret cards and stuff, like the Byron Katie, like, is that true? Like you gotta play it on someone, and then if it's not true, then they like have to pay you money or something.
I was thinking like I think I'd do like one suit of cards that did like emotional states, so like lonely or sad or happy or whatever, and you have to like, if you land on one of those squares, you flip a card from the stack, and you're like, oh, I got the lonely card. I have to spend the next round.
You have to like experience your loneliness and wallow in it.
Right. While everyone else is playing the next round.
Yeah.
Like, the next person rolls the dice, and I'm like, oh, be lonely.
Oh, is it my turn? Oh, you guys finally remembered me.
Right. And like, it goes around, and then you roll the dice, and you move to another square, and it's like, answer this question like, let's pick one. Something like, what was it like being competitive as a little kid? Like, ooh, that could really like stab someone in the painful spots, or like,
Yeah. Yeah, or you can you can build your other thing in.
So there's a suit of emotions, and then there's a suit of childhood questions, and then there's like maybe a suit of present and a suit of future.
Yeah, or like roles, like you got to be this person's father. Like that would be crazy. Like what we were saying before with what was the thing called?
I need to write some of this down.
This is gold. We shouldn't put it on YouTube. Keep it to ourselves. Yeah, like everyone's like playing roles and stuff, and then like if you do something, oh dude, that would be crazy, because if you're playing like, okay, now I'm your father, and also now I'm feeling angry because I got the angry card, and now you've done this thing, like now you have to like react in that way through that lens, like in this frame. And you don't understand this on this level. Like you could take the spiral dynamics, and you have to respond on like a red level. Like you only have this level of complexity. Dude, we don't even need a board for this. We just get the cards. Like, we just be like, this relationship, this emotion, this level of complexity, and then this is the stimulus. Now go.
This is more like improv, but actually you could do like 5 stacks of cards sort of thing, and you just like, okay, it's your turn, pick one.
Yeah.
So, like, give me an emotion, or you're like, okay, give me a childhood question, or and then whatever it is, you have to play it.
Yeah. And then someone doesn't, and you gotta play like all those roles at once. And like, how are you supposed to be like on a, like?
Well, I assume you have like 2 cards in front of you. You're like, this is what I need to do, and like this is from last round, and this is from this round. And they're just there to remind me, you know.
Yeah. And then maybe there's like actual like negotiation that goes on, like in Monopoly when you're trading properties.
Oh, interesting.
So there's like actually like a real thing, like you're really trying to win this game, but now your son has come out of the closet and you're homophobe who can't move past red.
Yeah, okay.
And you're angry because your wife is having an affair with the gardener who has your property that you need to finish your set.
Yeah, I don't know how you win this board game. No win conditions. A lot of like stake-based stuff if there are no win conditions.
Yeah, well, I mean, we should build that in, right? Like, if we're gonna do it, we should do it properly, where it's like, is it zero sum? Is it positive sum? Is it negative sum? Like, and like having that as like a thing that's going.
I think of Cards Against Humanity as like a negative sum sort of game. You sit there being, like, saying insulting things about whatever. I don't know. Negative sum can exist. Anyway, I'm not sure about win conditions.
Yeah.
How do you win Psychotech?
Well, you could have an underlying mechanic. Like, you could have a beige like level going on where, like the person's not gonna die, but like the character might, or the character could like lose points.
Oh, right. Like you start out with a brawl, and you start out with a this and a that, and like a Psychotech family or something.
Yeah.
You roll in the family, and then you have to like play it out depending on your role.
Yeah. Yeah, and like people can call you out, right? Like if you're like, if someone's like not giving you a deal, and then they're your wife, like your pretend wife, and you're like, oh, you're not letting me like do this, like our couple's supposed to share whatever. Like then the neighbor's there, and they're like, oh, is this how you treat your wife? Like making it all judgy and shit.
So I was thinking like a family, right? So mother, father, possibly grandmother, grandfather, possibly siblings, right?
You can have like a card like one of them's adopted. But like only one parent knows or something, or like a backstory, like the mom cheated and like.
Oh yeah, not genetically related.
The dad doesn't know, and
I mean, this just sounds like it's about to become a Constellation thing.
Yeah, Constellation. That was the thing I was trying to refer to before. Yeah, you could start doing in the Constellation as well, because then the people playing, like they're embodying the characters and they want to win because you make some stakes. Like if you win, then. I don't know, you win, which is, pretty high stakes already. And then, they start embodying the roles, and then they start doing that stuff, and, like, what's going on here, they can add to their backstory. And then, you level up, you know how to, meditate, so, when you're angry, you can actually just, play the meditation card and, take some time out.
Oh, yeah, like chance cards, right?
Yeah.
Save yourself with you get it angry, you can meditate on it.
Yeah, that reduces it. Roll the die for outburst.
God.
And you have to work through your problems. And also I mean, for me, I'm just wanting to make it as complicated as possible. But and also there's something there should be something fundamental on, which is could be Monopoly or Risk or whatever, Settlers,
Must think more.
Yeah.
The couple of elements.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna head off.
All right, we're at the hour. Yeah, this is good chat, and I will.
Psychotechnologies Live.
Woo!